Marisa Hamamoto, a pioneering dancer recognized by People magazine as one of the women changing the world, and hailed by InStyle Magazine as part of the Badass 50, is an award-winning transformational movement artist, speaker, and changemaker. Her journey marked by challenges such as rejection in dance due to her body, navigating identity as Japanese American, and overcoming a paralyzing stroke, culminated in founding Infinite Flow, an acclaimed nonprofit advocating for disability inclusion. Diagnosed with PTSD in 2021 and autism in 2022, Marisa has found clarity in her life's struggles, fueling her passion to inspire inclusivity. Thank you so much, Marisa Hamamoto, for joining me here on AwareNow to share the space and share your story. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Allié, for having me.
I'd like to start this way. Can you share with us how your experiences of overcoming rejection in the dance industry and navigating your identity as a Japanese American have shaped your advocacy for inclusion?
Absolutely. So I was born in Japan between a third generation Japanese American father and a Japanese mother directly from Japan. When I was 2, my family moved to California, so I grew up in the United States. I grew up bilingual, bicultural, but we ended up living in the United States. I grew up in actually where I'm living right now in Irvine, California, which is a suburb of Los Angeles. Irvine during the 80s and 90s, when I was a kid, was a predominantly white city. And my family, being Japanese American and Japanese, were a minority. At school, I got picked on for looking different. And for me, and in the early days, like bringing like a Japanese lunch and eating something that was different. And I quickly learned that our differences can divide us. On the other hand, the highlight of my week was a once a week ballet class after school, where even though I was the only dancer of color in dance class, something about moving my body to music made me feel like I belonged. And like just between the belonging and between just my love for moving my body to music and expressing myself through movement, I just fell in love with dance, and I just kind of threw myself into building or aspiring to build a professional ballet career when I was a teenager. But the moment I kind of stepped into this, okay, I'm going to become a professional ballerina kind of mindset, and took myself to auditions and productions and, all sorts of things. I got rejected again and again for the same reason, which is that I just didn't have the right body. I didn't have the right skin color. But in my gut, I knew that dance was a universal language that belonged to everyone. So I lived in this duality between, okay, dance is a universal language that belongs to everyone, but why am I getting the message in this dance community, in this dance world, where, dance seems to only be accessible to a few people? I got pretty burnt out, but in my senior year of high school, I got a scholarship to this performing arts high school called the Idlewild Arts Academy. And this was a boarding school up in the mountains, 2 hours away from Los Angeles, where I lived in Irvine. And this was one of those schools where diversity and inclusion was celebrated. It was one of these rare schools where gay kids got to be openly gay. There was many international students. And so, multiculturalism was really just celebrated. We had all kinds of like food tasting parties from different countries, and everybody just dressed up however way they wanted. And everybody was a little unique. It's an art school. Kids were studying either dance, theater, music, creative writing, visual arts, and so it's just a very like unique bunch of students. Anyways, I was in the dance department, and again made some really awesome friends in my class. And I just felt like, wow, this was the way. This was a great way to end my childhood. The very last dance concert of the year was a student choreographed concert. it was an opportunity where the senior dance students, which included me, there was 14 of us, had the opportunity to choreograph a 6-minute work. So we were assigned to, on a piece of paper, write down our cast, who we want dancing in our piece, the music, and just turn that into the chair's office. And so we did that. And then a couple days later, when casting was going to be announced, I decided to sneak into the dance studio a little earlier than everyone because I was just really anxious to see which of my classmates was going to select me for their work. But when I arrived to the studio and looked at the bulletin board, my name was nowhere except for choreographer for my own work. And it really stung because these were my classmates. I mean, it's one thing to be rejected by authority and institutions. It was another thing to be rejected by your own peers. And it really hurt. And I just couldn't believe this was the way that my childhood and my high school years was going to end. So I felt defeated. But then when I looked at the casting notice for maybe a third or fourth time, I noticed that 7 other students, mostly from the lower grades, were left out. And I said, this does not seem right at all. Like, this is a school that values diversity and inclusion. This is a student dance concert. Everybody should be able to participate. This is not right. And I just kind of fumed up on my own in that moment and just, I don't know, just got so heated up about how wrong this was that I took a pencil out of my backpack and wrote down all 7 names into my own cast. And it was kind of 2 days later, I got called into the chair's office saying, okay, we were trying to figure out what to do because there were 7 students excluded, and we thought that we would have to, have one of our faculty members choreograph a piece for them and this and that, but you solved this. But anyways, so, the student choreography concert was a success. I recently actually looked at the 6-minute work I created, and it's no masterpiece, but I did a good job really leveraging the unique talents of each person I had. And, I still keep in touch with these students. Anyways, so I was named Dance Major of the Year at commencement. But the real win is that since I graduated high school, there was a policy placed in the dance department ensuring that all dance students are included in the student choreography concert. And it's been 24 years since I graduated, and that policy is still there. So this was at that time, I didn't know this, but this was the moment that I realized that, my small actions can lead to big change. I mean, it was just me taking out a pencil, writing down 7 names. That was a small action I took. And so that incident when I was 18 at that time eventually led to the work I do today.
An amazing story. And for anyone who's not seen this short film Changemaker, they need to see it. Yes. Such a powerful story about how all of this work of yours began. So let's switch gears a bit. When you suffered a spinal stroke, paralyzing you from the neck down, you reflected on that moment. I watched a piece where you said, I thought my life was over at that moment because not being able to walk meant not being able to dance. What did dance mean to you then? And what does dance mean to you now?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. So dance at that time, when I had a stroke, I was 24 years old, and I was a senior in college, and I was secretly still pursuing this dream dance career. For me at that time, looking back, I had kind of lost touch of the essence of what dance is at the core, which is a form of self-expression, movement expression. It's a culture. It's a way that we express our culture. It's also a ritual. Dance can be a ritual depending on what type of dance this is and how dance is used. But at that time, for me, it was almost like I was trying to prove myself that I can be a professional dancer. And that was my narrow perception of dance, was trying to just pursue this one path dance career and not really seeing anything around that. And for me at that time, like I only saw dance to be something that had to look a certain way, that had to move a certain way. I, what caused the stroke is unknown, but I will admit that the 3 months, 4 months prior to the stroke, I was far from being healthy. And we're talking like I wasn't sleeping well. I was barely eating because I was trying to diet down for upcoming auditions. I was in school full time. I was also working part time. I was trying to make ends meet. I was just doing a lot of self-sabotage. Like my mindset was just not in a healthy place. I mean, it was like, and I'm a pretty organized person. But if you looked at my room at that time, it was a disaster. And not only that, there was mold growing. My mom actually found mold out of my apartment after she came over, and after I got into the hospital, she stayed at my place, but she came crying saying, "Oh my gosh, you've always been such an organized person. I've never seen a room that was so messy. This is so not you." But not only that, I found mold, and this is like, you definitely were not taking care of yourself. So anyways, for me, like, I saw the stroke as a wake-up call. When the doctor gave me a diagnosis, he definitely was like, "We don't know what's going to happen." And I didn't know what was going to happen either. And yes, I was completely paralyzed from the neck down. And so it was kind of like this battle in a way. But at that time, never did I think, "Oh, I'm paralyzed from the neck down, I can still dance." That was so not in what I thought. Now, obviously, I have a very, very different perspectives on that now, because I believe every single person has a dancer inside of them, and I am, it's almost like I was born onto this earth to kind of help people like discover the dancer inside of them. And people kind of know, okay, if you hang out around Marisa, at one point, she's going to make you do something uncomfortable, and she's going to get you to dance, and you're not going to even know that it's even dancing, but she'll get you to do something, move. There's a span of 8 years between my stroke and starting Infinite Flow. So it's not like, some people think, "Oh, okay, I got out of the hospital and 2 months later I created this organization." I'm like, no, there was a lot of time of unpacking life and becoming confused and looking back. I mean, yes, a lot of autistic tendencies that kind of piled on itself too.
Yeah, well, and I love how you just right there, you said a lot of time becoming confused, right? Because often we feel like we get it, we understand it, we see life one way, and then something traumatic happens, and it's not, "Oh, now I'm confused." It's this becoming confused. It's like it almost the confusion almost unravels, right?
Yeah, I mean, I will say, like, to this day, every single time I go and dance, like, it is, I start with gratitude, I end with gratitude. It's like, I will say, if there's anything that that stroke, there's many things that stroke, taught me, but definitely this sense of gratitude, this gratitude to live, gratitude to move, gratitude to breathe. Like, little tiny things that I used to think were not important became very, very important. So it was definitely a turning point. Health became first. So when I got back, it took me about 3.5 years to come back into dancing, but when I made a comeback, I chose a form of dance that I happen to be pretty good at, naturally pretty good at: ballroom dancing, salsa dancing, kind of the partner dance family. Somehow, no matter what form of partner dance I learned, somehow it came intuitively, it came naturally to me. And I enjoyed it. And that's a big thing too, in which I had lost the joy for dancing. Before the stroke, dance was not a joyful activity. It was like kind of like this this thing where either I achieved this one goal or I'm a failure. That's how I labeled it. So yeah, and it's so now it's interesting because it's like I'm on the other side of all of that. So
yeah, now such a different intention with the way you move and why you move. So again, miraculously you recovered from your stroke, but you had said that you were still paralyzed inside, even healing externally. What was it that caused the internal paralysis, and how did you overcome it?
So I just want to put a trigger warning for any sexual assault survivors out there. Skip to, I don't know, 5 minutes later, if you are. So the stroke had triggered a lot of trauma from the past. It wasn't just yes, there was a part of me that had PTSD over dancing again because the stroke happened inside of a dance studio and happened during dance class. And actually, that the day that the stroke happened, I was having a really good dance day where my body just felt like it was flying through space. And so I definitely had PTSD for dancing. But what happens, and anybody who's gone through any trauma knows this, one trigger can lead to another trigger, to another trigger, to another trigger. There's a ripple effect. So the stroke being kind of a big kind of trigger, it triggered a lot of past trauma. And a lot of the trauma was related to dance. It was a lot of the rejection, a lot of the, being told that my body wasn't enough. And, I even kind of got thinking that the stroke happened because my body wasn't enough. And, along the lines of that, I was sexually assaulted by one of my ballet teachers who also didn't believe in me. And so it was where it almost felt like a curse was put onto me. So, and again, PTSD and triggers can be kind of a ripple effect now. And at this time, I didn't have PTSD in my vocabulary. Myself, my parents, and no one around me had like mental health as anything in their vocabulary or in their awareness. And so I kind of went through this kind of dark period, not knowing what was going on, but I just knew that like I was just living in a lot of fear and terror. It's like I didn't want to speak to people. I did the bare minimum to kind of get by. At that time, I did receive a scholarship to grad school, and it just kind of gave me a place to go. So I did that. I worked part-time at a job where it didn't require too much people contact, so it was kind of like where, I look back at those 3 years and it was just where it's like there like deep down inside, it's like I wanted to dance, I wanted to move forward in my life, but it's like my body would not want to take any action whatsoever.
Thank you so much for sharing so personally and so authentically. Let's talk about the return. When returning to dance, you accidentally came across wheelchair dancing. I would love to hear this story. Will you share the story of your first dance?
Actually, when I came back to dance, it was actually through salsa dancing. I was kind of on this track of, okay, I finally finished grad school. All right, let's get on with life here. And that was actually when I accidentally found salsa dancing through attending a business business holiday party. And this was still in Tokyo. There's about 100 Japanese people, ages 40s, 50s, 60s. I was in my 20s, and so I was young. And there was a salsa dance performance in the middle of the party. And afterward, the couple said, all right, everyone onto the dance floor. Let's all learn the salsa basic step. And you have to understand, I don't mean to put a stereotype on my Japanese culture, but Japanese people are not the type to get onto the dance floor and just start dancing at all. But let me tell you, this room was full of people just dancing their hearts out. And and I was kind of the one person within the 100, and I'm looking around, and it didn't really matter if someone was doing steps right or wrong. Everybody was just having a great time. And I looked around going, oh my gosh, this is dance. I haven't been dancing for over 3 years because I've been scared to dance, but I'm dancing right now, and everybody around me like is dancing too. And in full honesty, at this time, I was kind of in this place where, okay, I went to this personal development seminar, but I was also a little bit like, I had really lost purpose in life, and I was a little suicidal, just to kind of get to the point. I think someone recognized that and kind of dragged me to the seminar. So during this holiday party in which I started dancing, that was actually when I was kind of brought back into my body. And it was through moving my body to music, dancing, that I realized that I mattered and that I can't just end my life now. So anyways, I ended up taking myself to a salsa class, and then like went full out and trying to figure out how to become a professional ballroom salsa dancer and teacher. Made that happen. So I moved back to California, and then, for a while I was kind of teaching dance locally and just keeping it easy. But eventually I moved to LA, wanting to really pursue, again, give myself another chance to this professional dance entertainment career that I've wanted. So I moved to LA, continued to teach. But when I started to audition, get an agent, and do the whole Hollywood thing, I was again kind of hit with this wall in which, I was told, okay, Marisa, you just don't have the Hollywood look. Marisa, you're Asian, and ballroom dancers on TV are not supposed to be Asian. And so suddenly, suddenly I'm in this place where, I'm being rejected all over for what I look like. But this time, like, I really was like, this doesn't seem right. There's nothing wrong with my body. There's nothing wrong with my ethnicity. What's wrong is, society and the biases. So then, again, I kind of got fired up over this is not right. But, I was also pretty like, I got pretty down on myself for all the rejection. So anyways, one day as I was meditating alone in my apartment, I remember taking out that pencil when I was in high school. And I asked myself, who is left out? What can I do? And how can I make a difference? And asking those questions led me to doing a lot of Google searching on dance, paralysis, dance, disability. And then I went down this like rabbit hole about statistics about disability, and I was shocked, to hear that, 16% of the global population, that's over 1.3 billion people, have a disability. And here, even in America, 1 in 4 Americans, that's 61 million Americans, have a disability. And I was like, well, but, I've been dancing, both in the States and Japan, and I've never ever heard about disabled people dancing, or what access. And I was clearly able to identify 2 studios that were not wheelchair accessible. So I was like, that's not right. That's not fair that, there's people left out of dance. So then I said, all right, I felt really called to do something here, and I wasn't sure what that was. And so, as the universe does, when you say, hey, universe, what should I do? I feel like dance should be accessible. It's not, show me the way. And along that journey of kind of like self-discovery, I was doing just a lot of social media scrolling, and I came across Adelpho, who was a paraplegic athlete and bodybuilder around my age, that lived like 30 miles away. And I was like, okay, maybe he's willing to give dance a shot. So Adelpho, somehow I was able to, I got a hold of Adelpho through Facebook on Messenger, and I just asked him, hey, I'm a stroke survivor. I am exploring this area of dance and disability. Do you want to meet at the dance studio and try dancing? And somehow he said yes. And so we met in the dance studio. I mean, it's like I think about now, this is so bizarre. But anyway, somehow he said yes, and we ended up meeting at a dance studio a couple days later. And honestly, I was very nervous. I had never danced with anyone using a wheelchair. I realized, I was like, oh, I don't know what I should teach because I've never done this before. So I went in there with a lot of fear. But somehow, after dancing with him experimentally for a couple hours, I realized that dancing with Adelpha was nothing different from dancing with anyone else. And this was a breakthrough moment where I realized that, oh wow, when you're dancing with someone, you see beyond things like race, color, size, age, gender, disability, sexuality, and I even went as far as feeling like, wow, if the world danced, this world, we might be able to end war, and this world might be a more peaceful place. I mean, my brain went there. And that eventually led to infinite flow. Like I had to somehow, I could not leave not acting on that moment. So, and the infinity sign represents two people dancing as one in harmony and eternity. It is a sign of inclusion. And so, I guess like just consciously, subconsciously, I'm always trying to connect new people to new people and see what magical dance they can do. So,
being diagnosed with invisible disabilities like PTSD, like autism, that must have presented yet another set of unique obstacles. How do you leverage your platform as a renowned transformational movement artist and speaker and to raise awareness about these often misunderstood conditions and work to break down the stigmas that surround mental health and neurodiversity?
Yeah. So first of all, when I started Infinite Flow in 2015, my understanding of disability was very, very narrow. I did not know I had never heard of the word neurodivergent or neurodiversity. I had heard about autism, but I didn't know I couldn't explain to you what autism or ADHD or any of these mental health conditions or neurodivergent kind of diagnoses are. My heart was in the right place, but over the years, I learned a lot about disability, a lot about inclusive language, a lot about accessibility. It's something that, it just came with the territory I was in. I wanted to make everything I did, inclusive and accessible. And so I constantly just studied, learned, listened. And along the way, I started to learn about autism. And the more I learned about autism, the more I was starting to feel like I was checking boxes. So then 2 years ago, 2 years ago, I finally decided to get assessed at the age of 40. And surely enough, I learned after leading a dance company for that advocates for disability inclusion for 6-7 years that I'm autistic. And if I were to be very honest with you, it took me about 5-6 months until I was able to comfortably say that I was autistic. And initially I was like, whoa, hold on here. I've been leading a dance company that advocates for disability inclusion. And here I am, I learned that I'm autistic and I'm not comfortable saying that. So I had to really sit with my own ableism and what I was, and just sit with it, along the lines of that. I listened to a lot of podcasts. I read a lot of books around autism. I also listened to perspectives about disability that previously I did not, because I didn't quite jive with how they were bringing up disability. So I listened to a lot of different perspectives, and I started to kind of kind of understand kind of the larger disability landscape. And I also started to recognize that there were many autistic folks that were coming out later in life. And then, social media is, social media became kind of this place to learn more. I just wanted to learn more about autism. I wanted to learn more about neurodiversity. And so I was starting to spend quite a bit of time, mostly on Instagram, and just kind of, seeing what creators were creating and saying and reading captions and share a lot of shared personal experience. And it was helpful because sometimes I'm like, okay, yeah, I get that's me. But anyways, at the same time, I didn't see anyone that looked like me, and that looked like me meaning someone that was female, cisgender, Asian American, heterosexual. Like there wasn't anyone that looked like me, and I was like, are there less autistic Asians out there, or are we just not seeing them because there's just so much ableism within the Asian American community? And it was definitely the latter, in which there's a lot of shame, a lot probably more shame in the Asian American community around autism and any type of disability than probably any other, and nobody's talking about it because nobody wants to talk about it. For me, representation is powerful. Like my first idol was Christy Yamaguchi because she was the only Japanese American woman that I saw on TV, too. And for, being in the disability community, all of my folks around me that are disabled tell me so much about how important representation, to see themselves, to see someone like themselves in the media, on TV, in film. I mean, it's a powerful thing because it's an acknowledgement, as you know, as a filmmaker, that we exist. So then that planted a seed for me to go, okay, do we want to talk about autism on social media? Yes, no. If I don't do it, then that also means that there might be another Asian out there who doesn't get diagnosed when they should, or maybe have a lot of internalized ableism. And I'm like, okay, I'm already a disability inclusion leader. If I don't do this, then nobody's going to do it. So then that got me to show up, and also come out with my age. That was a big thing. I had been hiding my age all this time. Then suddenly, like in the middle of January, I'm like, I was diagnosed with autism at 40, and I'm 42 now. And the more I actually said that, the more comfortable I actually became with my age. And so then I kind of found my voice, and it's been interesting because some videos have gone viral, and suddenly I have a lot of neurodivergent folks from around the world suddenly following me, commenting, DMing me. And some of it's been a little bit overwhelming because I get a lot of questions around, oh my gosh, how can I get diagnosed? And I'm like, oh God, there's not enough resources. And so along that path, I came across Proof Positive. And and actually I was introduced to Proof Positive right when I was getting an overwhelm of like DMs about autism and autistic folks, mostly young. And well, sorry, I shouldn't say young, but I think autistic folks that are about my age, so in their 40s and younger, and a lot of folks that were questioning. And regardless, it seemed like this autistic journey was a very complicated, tough, challenging, hard thing. And I was like, whoa, we got to change that narrative here. To backtrack, when I got my autism diagnosis, I was actually quite relieved. I was quite relieved that all these quirky things about me, all these things that were just different about me, there was nothing wrong with me. It was just that I'm autistic. And so it kind of empowered, the diagnosis actually empowered me. And my content that I was creating, I wanted it to be uplifting and empowering. I didn't want I didn't want the autism experience to be a hard one. So anyway, so I was introduced to Proof Positive by my good friend, Emily Ladau, who's also a badass disability advocate, right when I was starting to question about autism and well-being. And the moment I read about Proof Positive's mission, I was like, okay, I'm down. What do you need help with? So I've started to work with Proof Positive. Which gathers together the autism community to really promote health and wellness in the autism community. And when we say the autism community, it is not just autistic folks, but it's the friends, the family, it's everybody around, because everybody is affected by disability in some way, shape, or form. And when we think about the autistic experience, oftentimes it's about employment. And yes, that is a really important factor, employment and education, but it's always like this fight. And it seems like it's like that is the sole focus. But what about autistic people being happy and being well and being healthy and living well? And I am all about promoting that for everyone in the autism community. And I think if we can prioritize joy, prioritize happiness, then the job, the education, all those other things will be easier to navigate. But having lost my own well-being and health so many times throughout my life, a lot of times that we haven't been talked about in this interview, you are either healthy and well first, both mind, body, spirit. Otherwise, you are not able to do, other things.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. The wellness, the health, that has to come first and be the base to build on, all these other things.
Absolutely. And so, what Proof Positive is doing is just so important. And I've seen this organization going international. I've had a couple meetings with a community that's being built out in Asia around autism. And again, the stigma is so big, so big. But there again, the focus is so much on education and employment. And I planted a seed to them saying, hey, what about quality of life as a whole? Is this just about trying to conform to a standard that was set in the world that shouldn't be the standard, of achievement? Or can we, can we build a healthier society through giving people the permission to be well and to permission to be happy and joyful? That's the baseline.
I like how you reference the fact that, we are, as a society, so focused on the doing of things, of being educated, being employed, but what about just being? About the human being, just being,
yes,
being present. So one more question for you today, Marisa. For those who feel rejected and on the outside of an industry that they want to be part of, they want to be included in, but they feel they are not because of their disability, what advice do you have for finding a way in?
Yeah, so first of all, just know that you're not alone. The disability community, if we just take it statistically, that's 1 in 4 Americans, 16% of the global population. So just know that you're not alone. There you can find communities on Facebook, on social media, the Proof Positive Autism Alliance, Wellbeing Alliance, if that's something that's perhaps interests you. So you can find communities everywhere. And again, if you're lost, just go ahead and DM me and I can direct you to one. So I think being in community with others who are going through similar experiences is a start. Also, for anyone that does feel like they just don't fit that box, or they just feel like they're excluded, it probably also means you're meant to do something bigger. Like it's just a sign of, you're just a little different. But somehow you probably have a way of thinking that the world probably needs. And so don't think of yourself as there's something wrong with me, but rather, what's extraordinary about me is maybe the question to ask.
I love that. I love that. That positive directive that we have to give ourselves.
Yes. Positivity is important. And I won't lie, even just in the last couple of days, where one of my videos on Instagram went viral. I mean, I got my hate comments, I got the, negative stuff, and people somehow like to, I don't know why, but there's a little bit of this thing where people think that the whole world is negative and that's the normal, but that is not the normal. That should not be the standard. And so I would like to think that, just like proof positive, we keep on looking at the good. We keep on thinking that the cup is half full, not half empty. And we can train our brains and our bodies to be happy and be joyful.
For taking this time, for sharing so much of your incredible story, for doing the work that you do, and just for helping all of us become a bit more aware now. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Allie.